The doctor said she had 2 weeks left to live. Those words felt like a punch to the chest. The walls of the hospital room seemed to close in around Emma as the doctor kept talking about stages, treatments, and pain management. She could see his lips moving, but the sound felt far away. 2 weeks. 14 days. That was all the time she had to say goodbye to everything she loved. Emma was 28. She had just gotten promoted at her advertising job in Austin. She had saved up for a long-awaited solo trip to Italy. She had plans, dreams, people she hadn't even met yet. And now time was the one thing she didn't have. When the doctor finished explaining, Emma just nodded. She didn't cry, she didn't beg for another test. She simply thanked him, stood up, and walked out into the hallway. The floor beneath her felt heavy, as if every step echoed with the countdown of her remaining days. That evening, she packed a small suitcase. No one expected it, not even her parents. She didn't tell anyone about the diagnosis. She just boarded a bus heading to a small town called Willow Creek, the place where her grandparents lived. Her grandmother, Rose, opened the door that night, completely shocked. "Emma? What are you doing here, sweetheart?" Emma forced a small smile. "I just needed to come home for a while." Rose didn't ask questions. She hugged her tightly, as if she already knew her granddaughter was breaking inside. For the next few days, Emma didn't mention the hospital. She helped her grandmother water plants, sat on the porch with her grandfather, and watched the slow rhythm of small-town life unfold. It was peaceful, almost healing. For the first time in months, she woke up without the sound of alarms or the cold smell of disinfectant. She woke up to birds, to coffee, to warmth. But she knew. Deep inside, she knew the clock was ticking. On the 5th day, she went out for a walk in town. Near the square, she saw a group of kids huddled together, arguing around a broken phone tripod. One of them groaned, "It's not even recording again." Emma smiled and walked over. "What are you guys up to?" The oldest girl looked up. "We're trying to make a YouTube video. We want to start a channel, but everything keeps going wrong." Emma tilted her head. "Want some help?" They hesitated, then nodded. She knelt beside them and showed them how to balance the phone, how to face the light, how to speak confidently into the camera. Within minutes, the energy shifted. They were laughing, learning, trying again. One boy looked at her in amazement. "You actually know what you're doing." She laughed. "I used to work in advertising. Guess I picked up a few tricks." That was the first time she laughed since hearing the diagnosis. And it felt good. The kids started calling her Miss E. Every afternoon, they'd find her in the park, and together they'd film little videos, silly skits, mini documentaries about the town, fun interviews with shop owners. They named their channel Willow Wonders. It started small. A few views here and there. But soon, everyone in the town was talking about it. The bakery lady sent over cookies for their filming breaks. The librarian offered her office as an editing spot. Even the mayor subscribed and joked about wanting a cameo. Emma had no idea her presence was changing the whole town. She still got tired easily. Sometimes she'd lose her breath after laughing too much. But she didn't care. For those moments, she felt alive again. One evening, while she sat under the old oak tree, her grandmother came by. "Sweetheart," Rose said softly, "you look happier than I've seen you in years." Emma looked at her and smiled faintly. "I think I forgot what happiness felt like. But they remind me." 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Then a month. The doctors had said she wouldn't make it past 14 days, yet here she was, laughing, teaching, breathing. When she called the hospital for a checkup, her doctor was stunned. Her vitals were stable, her voice sounded strong. "Whatever you're doing," he said, "keep doing it." She didn't tell him she'd found her cure in laughter, not medicine. In helping others, not pills. Because joy, real joy, had become her oxygen. Every night, she wrote in a journal she called the Book of Living. She wrote small lessons she wanted to remember. You don't measure life by how long it lasts, but by how deeply it's felt. Helping others can heal what medicine can't. If you wake up and can still smile, you're already winning. She didn't know it, but those pages would one day mean more than she could imagine. By the 3rd month, she had become a local hero. The kids adored her. Parents admired her. The whole town watched as Willow Wonders hit 10,000 subscribers, something no one thought was possible for a tiny town in the middle of nowhere. But behind every smile, her body was growing weaker. She hid the pain well. When the kids asked why she sometimes needed to rest, she'd joke that she was just charging her batteries. No one knew the truth except her grandparents. One evening, as she sat with her grandfather on the porch, he said quietly, "You've brought this whole town back to life, Emma." She smiled. "I think they brought me back first." He nodded. "Whatever time you've got left, make sure you keep doing what makes your heart full." She did. Even as her energy faded, she still showed up every morning. She edited their videos, taught them how to tell better stories, encouraged them when they doubted themselves. Every sunrise felt like a bonus round. Every laugh, a victory against the clock. And then one night, as stars filled the sky over Willow Creek, she sat by her window and whispered to herself, "Thank you for giving me more time than they promised. But even more, thank you for giving me a reason to use it well." She didn't know it yet, but the thing she started in that little town, the love, the laughter, the lessons, would outlive her. Because some people leave behind things you can touch, and others leave behind something far greater, a change that keeps breathing long after they're gone. When the third month came, Emma's body started to show signs of exhaustion. Her legs trembled more often. Sometimes she couldn't lift her arms for long. But she never complained. She woke up every morning, sat on the porch with her cup of tea, and smiled as she watched the kids run toward her with cameras and tripods. They always came with energy and noise, a beautiful kind of chaos that made her forget the slow war inside her body. One morning, as she set up a filming spot in the park, she felt her knees buckle. The world spun for a second, and everything went black. When she opened her eyes, she was in her grandparents' living room. Her grandmother sat beside her, holding her hand, eyes wet. "Sweetheart," Rose whispered, "you scared us." Emma tried to sit up, but her grandfather gently pressed her shoulder. "Stay still. The doctor's coming." She managed a weak smile. "You two worry too much." But she knew this wasn't just a fainting spell. Her time was catching up to her. That night, as the house slept, Emma pulled out her journal, the Book of Living. She read through her own words, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Not out of fear, but gratitude. Somehow, she had been given more than what was promised. 2 weeks had turned into 3 months. 3 months filled with laughter, purpose, and connection. She had turned her countdown into a legacy. Still, there was one thing she hadn't done yet. She hadn't told the kids the truth. The next day, she gathered them under the big oak tree. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. The kids noticed she looked weaker. Her skin was pale, her voice quieter. "Miss E," one of the younger boys asked, "are you okay?" She took a deep breath. "Guys, I need to tell you something." They fell silent. "I came here a few months ago because I was sick. The doctors said I didn't have much time left." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. "But then I met you all," she continued softly. "You gave me more than medicine ever could. You gave me a reason to wake up. You made me laugh when I thought I never would again." The oldest girl started crying. You're not leaving, right?" Emma smiled through tears. "Not today. Not yet. I just want you to know that no matter what happens, you have something powerful inside you. You can make people feel something through your stories. Promise me you'll keep doing that, for me, for yourselves, for everyone who needs hope." They all nodded, tears streaming down their faces. That evening, after everyone left, she sat quietly and looked at the glowing sky. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of dying. She felt proud of living. In the following weeks, the kids threw themselves into their videos like never before. They filmed everything: the farmer's market, the school fair, even a short film about kindness inspired by Emma's story. They worked late into the evenings, editing, laughing, sometimes crying together. The channel started getting attention beyond their small town. Comments poured in from strangers. "This channel makes me believe in good people again. Whoever started this, thank you for reminding me what joy looks like." Emma read every comment, smiling at the screen. She never replied. She didn't need to. Just knowing she'd made a ripple in someone's heart was enough. Then came the day her strength finally began to fade for real. She woke up one morning too weak to get out of bed. Her grandmother sat beside her, brushing her hair softly. "Do you want me to call them?" Rose asked. Emma nodded faintly. Within an hour, the kids arrived, quiet, holding flowers, unsure what to say. They surrounded her bed, and Emma smiled at them one by one. "Don't look so sad," she whispered. "You've all given me more joy than I ever thought I'd have again." The youngest, little Ben, climbed onto the edge of her bed and held her hand. "We made something for you." He handed her a tablet. On the screen was a new video, just uploaded. It was titled, "The Woman Who Showed Us How to Live." The video was filled with clips, her teaching them to film, laughing, dancing badly during bloopers, giving advice, smiling under the sunlight. At the end, they'd written, "Thank you, Missy. You changed us forever." Emma couldn't hold back her tears. She watched until the end, then looked up at them with a trembling smile. "You did it," she whispered. "You told a story that will live longer than I ever could." That night, the town held a small candlelight vigil outside her grandparents' house. Nobody said the word goodbye. They just stood together, candles flickering, hearts heavy but full. Emma listened from her room. She could hear the kids singing softly outside. The sound wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She whispered into the quiet, "If this is my last night, it's a good one." Then she closed her eyes. The next morning, the town of Willow Creek woke to silence. Rose stepped into Emma's room and knew immediately. Emma was gone. But on her nightstand lay her journal, open to the final page. In shaky handwriting, it read, "If you're reading this, don't cry because I'm gone. Smile because I got to live longer than anyone expected, and I used it well. Keep creating. Keep loving. Keep living deeply. That's how you keep me alive." Rose pressed her hand over the page, tears falling freely. Word spread fast. The entire town stopped that day. Shops closed. Schools went quiet. People gathered at the park, the same spot where she'd first met the kids, and shared stories about Emma. The kids decided to post her journal entries, one by one, as videos. They called the series, "The Book of Living." Each week, they'd read one of her lessons and film a short story to go with it. A small act of kindness, a moment of gratitude, a reminder to live. The first video hit 1 million views within days. People from all over the world commented things like, "I never knew her, but I feel like I did. This story changed how I see life. Thank you, Emma, for reminding me to live." The kids couldn't believe it. Their small channel, the one that started with a broken tripod and a dream, had become a global inspiration. Emma's grandparents watched every upload, their hearts breaking and healing at the same time. Months passed, but the town never went back to normal. It became better. The mayor started an annual event called the Willow Living Festival in Emma's honor. It celebrated creativity, kindness, and the power of storytelling. Schools added media programs inspired by her teachings. Kids learned not just how to film, but how to see beauty in ordinary things. Even tourists began visiting, wanting to see the place where Miss E changed lives. And every year, on the anniversary of her passing, the townspeople would gather under the oak tree, light candles, and play her favorite video, the one where she said, "If you wake up and can still smile, you're already winning." Emma's story traveled far beyond Willow Creek. It reached hospitals, schools, and people who'd lost hope. Some called her a miracle. Others called her a teacher. But everyone agreed on one thing. She showed the world that life isn't measured in time, but in impact. And that's the thing about people like Emma. They don't just live, they leave something that keeps living for them. She was supposed to have 2 weeks left. But because she chose love, purpose, and joy, she turned those 2 weeks into forever. It had been 6 months since Emma's passing. But in Willow Creek, her presence was everywhere. You could see it in the park benches covered with engraved quotes from her journal. You could feel it in the laughter of children filming new stories with the same excitement she once taught them. And you could still hear her name whispered in the streets whenever someone spoke about kindness, courage, or hope. The Willow Wonders channel had become more than a project. It was now a movement. Every video they posted under the Book of Living series reached thousands of people across the world. From the US to Japan, from South Africa to Brazil, people watched, cried, smiled, and shared. Emma had never seen her story go viral. But she didn't need to. Her message was simple, and it resonated deeply. Don't just exist. One day, about a year after Emma's death, the kids received an email. It was from a woman named Clara Reynolds, a nurse from Chicago. She wrote, "I found your channel while sitting beside my mother's hospital bed. We were told she wouldn't make it through the month. But when I showed her Emma's story, she started smiling again. She told me she wanted to spend her last weeks painting instead of crying. She made it 2 more months, painting every single day. You gave me those days with her. Thank you." The kids printed that message and pinned it to their studio wall. Then more letters came. A young man from India wrote that he'd been battling depression until he saw Emma's videos. He started a small project helping street kids learn photography. A teacher from Canada wrote that she began every class now by reading one of Emma's lessons to her students. And a woman from London shared how she was inspired to quit a toxic job and start her own business, something she'd always been too afraid to do. Emma was gone, yet she was touching lives she'd never met, across oceans she'd never crossed. In Willow Creek, things were changing too. The mayor renamed the town's old library the Emma Carter Creative Center. It became a place where kids and adults could learn about media, storytelling, and digital art. Every wall was decorated with her quotes, handwritten by the children she'd once mentored. One read, "When you help others shine, you never really fade." Another said, "Joy is not something you wait for, it's something you create." Every time someone new visited, they would stop, take a picture, and whisper, "Who was she?" And the locals would smile and say, she was someone who refused to waste the time she was given. Her grandparents, Rose and Thomas, continued living in the same house where she had spent her last months. Every morning, Rose would brew an extra cup of tea and set it by the window. She'd look out at the park where Emma had taught the children and whisper, "You're still here, aren't you?" Thomas started carving wooden figures, each one shaped like a camera or a heart, and gave them to the new kids joining the Creative Center. He called them Emma's tokens. Sometimes, when the sunsets painted the sky gold, Rose would read aloud from Emma's journal to visitors. Her voice always trembled when she reached the last page, but she never stopped reading it. It was her way of keeping Emma alive, through words, through love, through repetition. By the second year, Willow Wonders hit 2 million subscribers. But the kids didn't act like celebrities. They saw themselves as keepers of Emma's message. Every year, they held an event called the Living Week. For 7 days, people from all over came to Willow Creek to create, painting, filming, dancing, writing, anything that made them feel alive. And at the end of the week, everyone gathered under the big oak tree to share what they'd made. One of the kids, now a teenager, stood up one year and said, "Emma showed us that life is not about how much time you have, but what you do with it. So if you're alive right now, that's enough reason to start something." The crowd clapped. Some cried. And somewhere, it felt like the wind whispered thank you. News outlets started picking up the story. A documentary filmmaker visited Willow Creek and made a short film titled 2 Weeks to Forever. It was uploaded online and exploded instantly. Millions watched it within days. People were moved by how one woman, given only 2 weeks to live, had sparked a movement that outlasted her. She had never asked for fame, never planned to be remembered. She just wanted to help a few kids find joy in creating. But the world has a way of amplifying pure things. A few months later, Rose and Thomas received an invitation to New York City. The Global Humanity Foundation was giving an award in Emma's name. The Emma Carter Award for Creative Kindness. It would be presented annually to someone who used creativity to make the world a little better. As they stood on stage, the elderly couple held hands, tears shining in their eyes. Rose said softly into the microphone, "Our Emma thought she was dying when she came home. But in truth, that's when she started living. If she taught us anything, it's that purpose doesn't come from how long we live, but how much love we leave behind." The audience stood and clapped, long, loud, and full of emotion. When they returned home, the whole town was waiting at the bus station, cheering. Kids held signs that read, "We love you, Miss E," and 2 weeks forever. Rose looked up at the sky that night and whispered, "You did it, sweetheart. You really did it." As years passed, technology changed. Social media evolved, new platforms came and went. But Willow Wonders stayed. It became a foundation, one that offered free creative workshops to small towns across the country. Everywhere they went, they told Emma's story. And everywhere, people cried, smiled, and remembered her words. If you wake up and can still smile, you're already winning. Then one day, nearly a decade later, something incredible happened. A young woman named Ava, one of the original Willow Wonders kids, was invited to speak at a global youth summit. She walked onto the stage, holding a small, worn-out notebook. "This," she said, "belonged to Emma Carter. She wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. But she taught us how to live. She was supposed to die in 2 weeks. Instead, she lived for 3 months. And because of what she did with that time, her story is still living 10 years later." She opened the notebook and read a line that made the audience go silent. "Don't wait for the right moment to start living. Every breath you take is already the right one." The entire hall stood up in applause. That speech went viral. And once again, the world remembered Emma. In hospitals, teachers began quoting her. On social media, people started a hashtag #LiveLikeEmma, where they shared acts of kindness and creativity. People painted, danced, volunteered, forgave, and smiled. All inspired by one woman who decided that dying wasn't the same as stopping. And in every heart she touched, a little part of her kept living. Rose passed away peacefully a few years later, holding that same journal. On her nightstand was a note that read, "Don't be sad. I'm just going to see my girl again." When the town heard, they gathered once more under the oak tree. They read from the journal, laughed, and celebrated both women. 2 generations who had taught them what it meant to truly live. Some people say legacies are built with money or fame. But Emma's story proved otherwise. She built hers with time she wasn't supposed to have, with love that refused to die, and with small acts of kindness that grew louder than any disease. The doctor had said she had 2 weeks left to live. But what Emma really had was forever. Years passed. The world changed, faster, louder, busier. But somewhere in the noise, Emma's voice still echoed. Not through her own mouth anymore, but through the countless people she'd inspired. Through videos, through letters, through acts of kindness quietly multiplying across the world. In a world obsessed with speed and success, Emma's story had become a reminder to slow down, to feel, to live, to love. 10 years after her passing, Willow Creek was no longer just a small town on a map. It had become a symbol, a living tribute to what one person's heart could do. The Creative Center was now 3 stories tall, its walls covered in murals of joy, compassion, and life. Children from different states came to learn there every summer. People didn't just visit to see where Emma had lived. They came to remember how to live themselves. The Willow Wonders Foundation had chapters in 12 countries. Each one carried Emma's mission, helping young people tell their stories and find purpose in creativity. Everywhere her name appeared, it wasn't just a memorial, it was an invitation. Live deeply. Love loudly. Leave gently. One morning, Ava, now in her late 20s, returned to Willow Creek. She hadn't been back in years. Life had taken her far away. Film school, travel, new projects. But her roots, her heart, were still here. She walked through the park, past the oak tree, and stopped at the small memorial stone by its base. Emma Carter, she turned 2 weeks into forever. Ava smiled softly, knelt down, and placed a single sunflower beside it. Then she opened her backpack and pulled out a small camera, the same old one Emma had once taught them to use. The same one that had started everything. She pressed record and began to speak. "My name is Ava, and if you've ever watched a Willow Wonders video, then you know who Emma Carter was. She was my mentor, my friend. She was told she had 2 weeks left to live, and instead she gave the rest of us a lifetime of lessons." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. When I was 12, I didn't believe I was good at anything. I thought my small town was too boring, my life too ordinary. But she showed me that ordinary doesn't mean meaningless. She taught me that you don't need perfect circumstances to make an impact, you just need a heart that cares. Ava looked down at the memorial stone and smiled. If you're hearing this, wherever you are in the world, promise me something. Don't wait until life gives you a deadline to start living. Do it now. Tell your story. Help someone. Make something beautiful, even if it's small. Because that's how Emma lived. That's how we keep her alive. She turned off the camera, wiped her tears, and whispered, "That one's for you, Miss E." When the video went online, it exploded instantly. Millions watched it within days. But this time, something different happened. It wasn't just likes and shares. People began acting. Thousands of viewers started small projects in Emma's honor. Students built community gardens. Nurses filmed stories of recovery and hope. Teachers had their students write journals titled, "My 2 Weeks," where they described how they'd live if they had only 14 days left. A movement was reborn, not one of sadness, but of passion. Emma's message had become a spark lighting thousands of new candles. One of those candles burned in a hospital in California. A man named Daniel lay in a hospital bed, staring at a blinking heart monitor. He'd just been told he had stage 4 cancer. 2 months, maybe 3. He felt lost. Angry. Then a nurse walked in and said, "You should watch this," handing him a tablet. It was Ava's video, the one about Emma. He watched, silent at first, then crying halfway through. When it ended, he whispered, "2 months, huh? Let's see what I can do with that." 2 days later, Daniel began visiting other patients, telling jokes, bringing snacks, recording short clips of joy. He started a channel called 2 Weeks of Light. It grew fast. And on the description, he wrote one line. "Inspired by a woman I never met, but who taught me how to live." That's how legacies work. They travel quietly, carried by people who never planned to carry them. Passed hand to hand, heart to heart. Emma's story had started in a small hospital room with a countdown. But now, it lived in thousands of hospital rooms around the world, turning countdowns into beginnings. Years later, Ava stood on another stage, this time, older, wiser, stronger. She was giving a speech at the annual Global Kindness Summit. Behind her was a giant screen displaying Emma's photo, smiling, alive, radiant. When Emma died, Ava said softly, "I thought that was the end of her story. But now I know, it was only the beginning." Her time was short, but her impact was endless. She proved that a single act of love can echo through generations. So if you're watching this, and I know you are somewhere, thank you, Emma. You didn't just change my life. You changed the world. The crowd stood and clapped. And somewhere, in the quiet that followed, it felt like the wind moved differently, gentle, warm, almost familiar. Like a whisper. Keep going. When the summit ended, Ava walked outside and looked at the sky. It was sunset, the same golden hue that used to bathe Willow Creek. She smiled and said, "We're still living, Missy. Just like you taught us." Back in Willow Creek, under the old oak tree, the kids, now grown adults, gathered again. They shared food, laughter, and stories. Someone played one of Emma's old recordings. Her voice came through, clear and calm. You don't get to choose how much time you get. But you do get to choose how you spend it. And if you spend it loving, helping, and creating, then you've already lived enough. Silence followed. Then smiles. The group raised their cups to the night sky. "To Emma," Ava said. "To the girl who turned 2 weeks into forever." And that's how the story ends, not with tears, but with gratitude. Because Emma Carter didn't just survive longer than the doctors said she would. She taught the world that life isn't about counting days, it's about making days count. And that's the kind of story that never really ends. Please subscribe and turn on the bell so that you will get notified when a new story drops tomorrow.